Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We're here for another episode of the Aviation Growth Podcast. And today with me, I have Jordan Scales. Hey, Jordan. How's it going?
Pleasure.
Good. Yeah, we just ran into some nice technical difficulties, so we're gonna take things from the top here, but hopefully that'll be the last of that. But first, Jordan, we got connected a few weeks ago through LinkedIn. I had kind of put out a post saying that we're going to be doing this podcast, and you came highly recommended from one of your friends. So we got connected, and I really enjoyed our conversation. We talked a bit about workforce development, your passion for this industry, and so wanted to have you on as a guest. But I guess maybe we could just start with a quick intro into who you are and maybe what you're doing on a day to day, what your day job is today, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we get started, I do want to show my appreciation and thanks for being invited to record today. I am all about anything that is innovative within the industry, especially anything that is going to share new thoughts and opinions that are going to be progressive and hopefully kind of push the needle for change. So when I saw the invitation, I automatically hopped on it because I really appreciate everything that you're doing on your end, and anything that I can do to contribute. That's just icing on the cake. So, but as far as myself, to everyone out there, I'm Jordan Scales. I am 28 years old. I know. I'm from Fayetteville, Georgia. It's a small town just about 20 minutes south of the city. It's pretty close to the airport. I am a graduate of Auburn University, where I studied aviation management there, and I have been in the industry now for just over 6 years. I've had the pleasure of working at a myriad of companies within that short period of time. I've been able to work at Bell Helicopter, Textron, and various different Textron sub-companies, Textron Aviation, Textron Ground Support Equipment, and most recently I worked at an aircraft brokerage by the name of JetAVIVA. I worked there for a number of years, and I currently work at a company called JETEX, JETEX, and we are a network of FBOs. We have almost 40 locations worldwide. However, we do not have any locations here in the U.S., and so for our U.S. clients, we're actually able to sell various different services that an FBO would typically provide you. We're able to sell that domestically here in the U.S. through our various different FBO relationships that we have. So we're able to sell contract fuel and ground handling services, as well as provide any kind of international trip support. I am a corporate account manager for us, and so I manage a few of our large accounts here in the Northeast. I'm their kind of point of contact for all services, whether it be fuel or international trip planning. And I also put on my sales and business development hat, and I help bring new clients into the business. So I do a bit of prospecting in that regard as well.
Cool. Awesome. So if anybody's traveling internationally, they should give you a call.
They should give me a holler. They should give me a holler. It's completely free for me to spit out a quick trip cost estimate. So if you're looking to have a client right now that's flying from Farmingdale, New York to Sochi, Russia, and so we were able to coordinate their entire event from start to finish. Including their tech stop, and we were able to coordinate getting all their hotels and ground transportation, we provided the fuel throughout the entire trip as well. So from tip to tail, we were able to be their kind of concierge for the whole process.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I know right before we hopped on this call, we were talking a little bit about your trip up to New York, and you had the opportunity to attend and speak at the JetNet IQ Summit. which I'm really jealous of. I wanted to get to that event. Fortunately, it didn't turn out for me, just scheduling conflicts and whatnot. But it seemed like it was an awesome event. It usually is. There's usually some pretty incredible people in our industry that make it there. But tell me a little bit about how that trip went and what you were able to talk about there.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So for your audience and those who are unaware of what JetNet IQ is, JetNet is a company in itself, and they are a data aggregator. And what they do is they aggregate the data that is associated with aircraft transactions, aircraft specifications throughout the years, and really anything that deals with aircraft flight history as well. So you can really kind of find any aircraft in the world and understand where it's flown for almost its entire existence, and also understand who has owned it through that entire period of time as well. So it's an amazing tool for forecasting and things of that nature. They host this event, JetNet IQ, every year, where they really kind of invite the who's who of business aviation to attend the event. And so we're talking CEOs and senior management from all the OEMs, from the various different engine manufacturers, to various different FBOs and aircraft management companies, to different fuel providers, really just from top to bottom. If you touch business aviation in some regard, you're likely invited to the event. But it is still pretty intimate. I think they only invite about 100, 200 people a year. This was an event that I've been hoping to get involved with for many years. And so for this year, for me to be actually invited to speak at the event was truly kind of an overwhelming moment for me, because the folks that are in this room are really the game changers for our industry. And so if you were going to try to promote any kind of message, this is the audience that you want to speak to. So I was very flattered to have that opportunity, and I was invited to speak on a panel of 3 other professionals, and we all kind of had some kind of DEI initiative that we're working on. There was one woman who she leads a foundation that helps to get impoverished youth into A&P programs, and so they can develop more of a technical trade. Myself, I was there to speak on my various different projects and initiatives that I'm working towards getting more students, more college students and young professionals as a whole into the industry. And so it was amazing, because I was really taken back by how my message really actually resonated with the group, and how once I finished my presentation, how many people amongst the room came up to me and just asked how they can get more involved, because I really kind of challenged them in what I had to say. I'm very passionate about getting more youth into the industry, and shared everything that I'm doing, and almost to the extent where I'm saying, hey, I'm 28 and I'm doing this. You guys have a bit more age on you. What is it that you're doing? But they accepted the challenge, and like I said, there were just so many people that came up to just ask, how they can get involved. I'm currently in the process of establishing a foundation that is essentially going to connect college students and young professionals to the industry, because there's just there's a gap right now. There are students who would like to get into the industry but don't know how, or don't know who to speak to, and then there are our businesses and corporations who want to get in front of this talent, but they don't have the resources. In the business aviation community, we don't have the same resources that the folks that are in commercial aviation do.
Right.
We don't have fully fleshed HR teams that have 15 individuals. 3 of those folks may be dedicated solely towards university recruitment. We don't have that. We may have one HR professional who, was handling various different in-house, objectives, so they don't really have the capability to, handle payroll, and then also, travel across the country to speak to students. And so, but that touch point is very necessary. And so I preached how, the different initiatives that I'm working on to help bridge that gap. The foundation that I'm starting, I'm currently partnered with Auburn in creating a Business Aviation Day conference that's going to be hosted later this year in November. And so was able to share everything that I'm currently working on and just share how easy it is to connect to the younger generation. It really only takes 15 minutes of your time, a week to establish a mentorship with somebody or to get involved with your local aviation programs. There's just various different methods in which you can reach this group. And so that was my message that I preached to the group. And I was really astounded by how accepting the group was to my message, and especially at the conclusion of the event, Ed Bolin was given his closing remarks, and he took the time to kind of mention me by name, and so and said, I want to reiterate what Jordan Scales said, and you guys need to do more. You guys got to be better. And so, for someone of the status of Ed Bolin to mention me by name and to project the message that I had been preaching just earlier. It was really valid. It was a really validating moment for me. It really made me understand that people are buying in to what it is that I have to say, and I'm not alone in this thought that we need to have more younger folks in the industry. So that event went way better than I could have ever imagined. I did not think I was going to get that much industry buy-in in what I had to say, and it just gave me a whole lot of hope and motivation towards blazing this path forward and just keeping things going.
Yeah, well that's awesome, and that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about our conversation a week or two ago, was just your passion that you're bringing to this subject, and also the action that you're bringing to it, because it's a big conversation right now. Obviously about workforce development and shortages in different areas, and especially when we look at business aviation. We've lost a lot of people from the business aviation industry to commercial, and also some other industries that have been able to maybe be a little bit more appealing in the short term, whether it's with like technology or pay or whatever it may be. And so, there's a lot of people talking about, how do we attract new talent into this industry? How do we keep talent in this industry? But not everybody is doing something about it. So that's what I really like to hear, what you're doing right now and kind of your vision for the future. But maybe like we start and kind of back it up with, you didn't always, not from necessarily a young age, you didn't have this vision of getting into aviation, right? So like, take us through that story on what brought you to this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. I'm a bit of an outlier, and as business aviation is concerned, I didn't grow up in an aviation family, from a military or civilian standpoint. So my dream was birthed a bit further into my childhood, but I was in high school. And honestly, my entire life I wanted to be a roller coaster engineer. And it's funny. I share that I share that with people all the time, and their face they start to laugh and giggle, and kind of makes me think like if I did become a roller coaster engineer, and I tell people that was my job, if I would receive like the same kind of response.
Well, I think it's not that that's necessarily a funny job. It's just like, now you're not doing that, so it makes it, But obviously, roller coaster engineers are pretty important for anybody who wants to enjoy the theme parks, for sure.
No, but no, I used to want to be a roller coaster engineer. I'd never met one a day in my life, but roller coasters exist, and so I knew that there is a community of folks out there who their job is to create roller coasters. But
yeah.
I wanted to be a roller coaster engineer my entire life, up until I was about 15 or 16. And, I'm having to make the decision of looking at schools and colleges and trying to think of what I was going to major in. And the more I thought about it, the more I kind of came to the conclusion that, Jordan, I really kind of had a heart-to-heart with myself and said, Jordan, math isn't your forte. So maybe you shouldn't, pursue a major that's going to be 5 years of just intense mechanical engineering. And so, I had to agree with myself. I love data, but I'm not the best with just math and calculus and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Arithmetic, and so. I was in limbo for a little bit, but was on a flight from Orlando back to Atlanta, and I'm still wrapping my head around, what it is that I'm going to do, because my next school was going to start really soon, and I was going to have to start going on college visits and such. And so I'm trying to think, all right, what is similar to riding on a roller coaster? And just the light bulb just went off in my head, and pure epiphany said, being on a plane.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I love to travel. If flying a plane, I'm able to experience, the speed and the G-forces that you would on a roller coaster. So I said, yeah, cool. I'm going to be a pilot. And I landed and told my mom, hey, Mom, I'm going to be a pilot now. And she was just so puzzled. Because, like I said,
where did this come from?
Exactly. She had no clue on what it would take or the process on becoming a pilot, except going to the military. And I at that age, going to the military just didn't resonate with me.
Yeah.
And so. Luckily, I am here in Atlanta, and she put me into a couple local Delta camps. There's a local ACE program that's here, so I was able to meet different people in aviation and meet pilots. And through the ACE program, I took my very first discovery flight. And so, similar to a lot of us, the moment that you see the world from that height, you're locked in. And there's nothing else you want to do but be involved in aviation. So I went on and pursued aviation schools. Ended up at Auburn University for a myriad of reasons, but ended up at Auburn. Was pursuing my professional flight degree, but only lasted in the program for just a handful of months. My family and I, we had money set aside for school, and but the flight program was an additional expense on top of the out-of-state tuition that we were already paying, and so.
Sure.
After a few months, mom and I had a heart-to-heart and said, hey, I said to her, hey, this is great and all, but this is too much, and this is really going to put us in a binding position. So I said, hey, I'm going to step away from the program. I can pick up flying once I graduate, and it's on my dime. But I know our situation, and I can't. It would be very selfish of me to put us in a compromising position just because I want to continue to fly.
Sure.
So I changed vectors a bit and went from professional flight to aviation management, and I mean, I was I was like slingshotted into. I mean, it was full go mode from that point on. I wasn't flying anymore, so I was able to take that time and just fully dedicate it into everything aviation. And I was able to get an internship that summer with a local corporate flight department here in Atlanta. The following summer, I was able to get an internship with, it was Cessna when I applied. By the time I showed up in Wichita, it was Textron Aviation.
Yep.
And so was able to, had an amazing internship experience there. I speak so highly of Textron's internship program across the entire enterprise. They really know how to create an internship program that gets students involved and has their hands in various different pots. And it was through that program that I was invited to join Textron's leadership development program. And what that is a 2-year rotational program where you work a year at 2 of Textron's different entities, because it's a conglomerate. They own various different companies. Being aviation suited, I was able to work a year at Bell Helicopter, but then there's their North American commercial sales team, and then did a year of marketing at the Textron corporate office in Rhode Island. I would then graduate from the program and became a sales manager at Textron Ground Support Equipment. So Textron purchased Tug back in 2014 when they were forming Textron Aviation, and then went to create its own kind of ground support equipment entity, purchasing a few companies and creating this large umbrella company to really kind of be a jack of all trades in that industry. And so I was a sales manager for them and had an amazing time. Was able to travel the world and sell, aircraft de-icers to every corner of the globe, and owned our government and military programs, and saw an entirely different side of aviation than what I was used to. But my experience at Textron also is what fuels my passion for wanting to get students involved into business aviation. I was fortunate enough to get my internship experience. I know that I was one of only 100 kids that got accepted that year. Not every student is fortunate enough to be able to have the same experience that I had. But it wasn't until I was in Wichita and I spoke to one of their regional sales managers that I realized that I wanted to sell aircraft. Mm-hmm. And meeting with a delivery manager and getting to shadow, John Deere coming in to pick up their Citation 10 Plus. Yeah. And just being able to see that whole process, like, wow, like this is how it happens. I didn't even know that there were people that sold planes. I kind of thought it's like a car dealership, and somebody rolls up and says, "Hey, Textron, I want this in blue," and they come back in a few months and it's there. I wasn't aware of all the pieces that were involved, and so to speak to regional sales managers and delivery managers and contract managers, and just seeing the entire flow of the process and understanding that these jobs exist, I was now aware of potential job opportunities for me in the future. Not every student has that luxury, and so I want to, in some way, shape, or form, help give that perspective to more students. And so it's why I'm so passionate in what I do, and it's why I have tried to create these situations or events where this exchange of information can happen. So the Auburn event that I've mentioned before, and my foundation, and just trying to create multiple touch points for students within the industry to help establish their network and really just kind of gain more perspective into the industry. And I'm sorry, I've really gone on a tangent from your question, but I'll share the story and then we can move on. But when I speak to these students at Auburn and I ask them, like, hey, what do you want to do when you graduate? And they say, oh, well, I want to work in aviation. And all right, okay, so what does that mean? And their response is, oh, well, I guess I'll go work for the airlines. But that's their response because that's all they know. Sure. That's their scope of aviation. It's all right, I want to be in aviation, so I just go to the airlines.
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll figure out exactly what my calling is. However, they have no context for what it is on our side of the fence in business aviation. All they see is pilots, schedulers and dispatchers, and A&Ps. They're not aware of all of the operational jobs that are involved within those, flight departments themselves, but externally, at the
Sure.
OEMs, at an FBO, at any myriad of the 135 operators that are out there. There are so many jobs that are out there, but they're not aware of them. And it's partial fault on the industry itself, as I mentioned earlier. There hasn't been great communication of the opportunities available, but it's due to the shortage of resources within the organizations themselves. So
Sure.
anything that I can do to help bridge that gap and help create that channel communication and make that stronger is something that I'm going to fight towards and try to improve.
Yeah, sure. And so, I've been, a younger person in this industry. When I first entered into it, I was 21 or 22, and I had the opportunity to really travel all over the place and go and see different flight departments and visit OEMs. It was an incredible experience for me as a young person. I didn't know, how much really exists. There's so many different layers to this industry, which means that there's a ton of opportunities. But I think what we're partially seeing right now, as there's limited people to fill positions, is that the industry has had somewhat of a wall up around it. Whether the people in the industry have known about it, I don't think it's been purposefully put up there, right? But right now we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we break down that wall? How do we reach all of these younger people and students that, or potentially pull people in from other industries that are further along in their careers right now? And so I think right now one of the great opportunities is that right now you can reach more people today than you ever have been in the past. And I said we got linked up with LinkedIn, and a week later we're doing a podcast and having this discussion, right? And so I think that communication and getting in touch with potential candidates for this industry is easier now than it ever has been. And so you had the opportunity to join Textron and go through their internship and leadership program, which they have a great organization. Some awesome people have come through there that I know. But I guess what would, looking at it from two different aspects, what would your advice be first to like the flight departments, whether you're maybe a charter operation or a corporate flight department, or maybe one of the thousands of companies that support this industry? What would be your advice to those organizations about, sending a message to younger people and to students and people outside the industry? Have any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of what I would have to say there is that it's really a conversation of engagement.
Sure.
I am all about starting locally, and especially for towards this initiative. No matter really where you are within the U.S., there's some kind of aviation school or entity or group that's local to you that you can reach out to. And I highly recommend any kind these businesses take the time to do so, or take the time to connect with groups such as what I'm forming, and I believe that there are some other groups that are out there. I mean, even your women in corporate in corporate aviation. There are just tons of aviation centric groups that have developed touch points with colleges and universities. But reach out to these groups, reach out to these local communities, and say, hey, we're hiring.
Yeah.
There may be some kid who his entire career he wanted to be in finance, and he wanted to go to he wants to be in Wall Street, but then he hears like, man, I can be the CFO of a 135 operator. Like that sounds kind of cool. Like I get to crunch numbers, and then hear APUs in the background, like and just get to be around these beautiful machines. But they didn't know that was a career opportunity because they'd never heard of it. Something that
Sure.
I really stressed to my audience at the JetNet IQ Summit was that there are hundreds of students out there that would love to work for your company. They just don't know you exist yet.
Right.
And it's as true as that. There's so many talented individuals that are out there who would love to share their talents with the industry, but they don't know that XYZ job exists. And to the companies, I would also say, you have to be a bit, you have to be willing to bring in a new perspective.
Right.
Something that I shared with the group that I was a bit, I'm timid to actually say was that, as an industry, we're really good at keeping people out.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily by design. It's just we work in a very I like to say a very incestuous industry. A lot of people they just kind of move from one company to the next laterally, and we really kind of recycle the same talent pool instead of trying to bring in people from externally. And so because of that, as this continued process of just the same people swimming in the same circles, you don't get a more the thoughts are still pretty homogeneous.
Yeah, sure.
You don't get any kind of outside influence or any kind of change in thought process. So by bringing in people externally, yes, it may disrupt the current environment, but it's going to be to the betterment of everybody involved.
Right. I think it's you have to realize that for a short term, you're making a short term, or I should say, a long term investment in bringing people in, even though it's going to take some heavy lifting in the short term. And so, one of the things that I always heard, when you're looking at, MROs, when MROs are looking to hire, they have job requirements that state, we want somebody with 20 years experience on, 15 different airframes. And, it's just how many of those people exist, right? You're just working from the same pool. And so, you're essentially anybody that fits that criteria, you're pulling from another MRO or, potentially from the airlines. And so it's a very limited talent pool, right? And so, I think if companies haven't already started, and not to say that there's plenty of companies that have invested a lot in this, right? It's not like I'm putting a blanket statement out there, but if you haven't invested in a program that involves career progression and on-the-job training and a career path that makes sense, it's going to be really difficult to fill these open positions and keep your operations running smoothly, right?
And so I'm really glad you touched on that too, because that's exactly the message that I tried to portray to this group as well. It's it's twofold. It's getting the talent in there, but then it's also keeping them. It's creating just as you said, it's creating an environment of collaboration, and career growth and development that is really what's going to behoove you as an organization. Because just as you said, you may have to look in places that you traditionally weren't looking at, to find this talent that's really going to help your group out. It may take somebody who isn't proficient in every single OEM, but maybe really good in one, and you take that talent and you hone them, and you share your knowledge. As I said earlier in our recording, bridging that gap, that experience gap, that knowledge gap from seniority to these new individuals, and bringing this person into the fold, and not hiring somebody just to check a box and then just kind of leaving them in their corner,
right,
but really investing into this person, because it's just, I'm sure that senior AMP can learn a whole lot from that new guy in certain disciplines. So you really gotta. It may take a bit more effort, but it's really going to better everybody that's involved.
Yeah. And we really saw that, like, from a technology perspective. First, when you look at just the job market out there right now, everybody, it's super competitive, right? And so there's a lot of discussions about creating the right cultures and the right work environment, because retaining your personnel is just, it's such a huge part of any business. And so when we were out and really selling new technology into the flight departments, I really saw one of the benefits of that was around retention and gaining efficiencies within your operation, because you have somebody who is maybe 25 years old that comes into a corporate flight department and is working on an aircraft, and as they're working on it, they're having to fill out everything by hand, pen and paper, and they're probably looking at it like, what are we doing here? This seems really backwards, right? I can barely even write my name without my hand starting to cramp up. My handwriting is atrocious, but it's little things like that I think the industry hasn't necessarily thought about that could potentially sway people, because maybe I love working on aircraft, but I don't want to deal with a bunch of BS paperwork or redundancy, or not being able to see what's going on in real time with the operation or the aircraft, and those types of things are things that could potentially result in somebody leaving a company, or potentially leaving an industry. So it was an interesting kind of thing that we saw along the way. And we had a lot of as younger people in at our customers' operations took over leadership positions. They were really hungry for new technology and changes in processes, and just changes in the way that they were thinking. And oftentimes that ultimately led to a smoother operation, a more profitable operation, and just a better business, right? So it's all, I love this discussion, and one of the things that I think you had mentioned to me about, kind of as you've gone through this process and your journey has been about mentorship. And you said you've had mentors and you've become a mentor. Can you talk to me about what that looks like, and some of the the benefits that you've seen in being a mentor and working with other mentors?
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that, because this is something that of all the initiatives that I work on, this is what is probably nearest and dearest to my heart because it's had the most profound, really kind of display and change in my life. I wouldn't be where I am at professionally had I not had some really great mentors along the way.
Yeah.
And I don't have a single mentor. I have a few really trusted professionals that I've been connected with for a number of years now, and everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And if I'm in a certain situation, I'll lean on one, and for another cause, and it may be someone else. And I'm open to having more mentors because there may be some pool of knowledge that my current group doesn't have. I believe you should always be trying to strive to learn more and grow your professional network. But I think mentorship is paramount for any young professional, regardless of the industry. But especially in ours, where there really isn't any kind of linear progression from start to senior manager. We're not like finance, we're not like engineering, where you hop into a role, you spend enough time in that role, and you're pretty much guaranteed to move up the chain. You go from engineer 1 to 2 to 3 to whatever the case may be. You go from finance from associate, and you work your way up to partner. There's a linear progression. That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist in any capacity, and a bit more so on the pilot side, but not on the operation side. And so, as you're navigating the industry, it really helps to have someone who can kind of point you in the right direction, someone who can help get you in front of the right spheres of influence, so that it may make that next conversation a bit easier. This is a very relationship-driven industry, so if you're able to, the sooner you're able to expand your network, the greater your career trajectory is going to be. Sure. And so when I speak to these students, the first thing I tell them all is that if you don't have a LinkedIn right now, create one by the time you get home. You and I would not be connected if it wasn't for LinkedIn. There are so many that you touched on it earlier. We live in a time where we're the most accessible that we've ever been in our entire life. I can have somebody from Timbuktu message me on LinkedIn tomorrow, to just chat about whatever it is. And so I really try to push on my students, just how important it is to establish that relationship, because there are questions that these students don't even know they have yet, that that their mentor likely has gone through that process. I'm currently a mentor to 2 different groups. Auburn recently started an OBAP chapter, and I have 3 mentees from that group. I'm also an MBAA mentor. In total, I have 4 mentees, and it may sound a lot, but it's really 15 minutes every week, every other week, to just check in and say, hey, how's it going? How's flying going? How are classes? How's your internship search going? Just being able to kind of help, be that carrot, and not, so that they can stay on course. Because I get so much fulfillment out of hearing my students, do well. One of my students right now has an internship with Delta, which is phenomenal, and he was co-op. He was interning over the summer. And I was able to, put him in front of various different people from my industry to gain, knowledge and perspective. And I get really jazzed up from hearing them come to me like, hey, I just talked to so and so, it was so great. He showed me around the office, and this, that, and the third. But just knowing that they have more perspective than they did, 90 days ago. Makes me feel it's a very rewarding feeling to me, and I know I haven't been in the industry for very long. I don't have all the answers, and so I'm very open to sharing my network, so that if I don't have the answer, I can at least put you in front of somebody that does. And everybody in this industry has a network of some sort and can do the same.
Yeah.
And it's through that transference of information and that these students are now able to grow their network, so that by the time they graduate, they at least have some kind of context on what they want to do, and they know a few people that can help them get there. Hopefully it's already done, and they already have a job offer before they graduate. But the conversation is the same, is that I want to do everything that we can to put these students in the best position, so that once they graduate, there is no worries about, oh, what am I going to do? I've got this summer to figure out to get a job if my parents kick me out. Like, everything is already in motion, and they can just be a contributing member, to our industry from that point.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's awesome that you're involved in that capacity. And I think that, for, like you said, it's not this huge commitment. It's about just providing little tidbits, little quick hits of information can really go a long way in changing the trajectory of somebody's career path, right?
Absolutely.
And I really am really big on LinkedIn. Just literally every day I'm connecting with somebody on LinkedIn that has some good information, or there's an opportunity to work together on something. And it's funny, you had said before you leave this room, you need to have a LinkedIn account. And I was talking to one of my cousins. She's not in the aviation industry, but she was younger. She's in her early 20s, and she was up in New York, and she was struggling to find a job. I'm like, well, what are you doing to find a job? And she's like, well, I'm applying, and I'm on Indeed or any of these job boards or whatever. I'm like, do you have a LinkedIn? And she's like, no. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is the easiest way to, find people at specific companies or in an industry, or, if you don't have a LinkedIn in, the business world in general, it's almost like you're non-existent to the outside world, right? Like, this is where, a lot of people are doing all of their connections, and this is where business is getting done. So that's I can't stress that enough, for whether you're a student or you're already in this industry. The power that this tool brings us for networking and sales and marketing is just massive, right?
It's 100%, and it's I really want to normalize to these students like normalize having a LinkedIn. This is not just for old people. It's not just for professionals, because the sooner that you start one, the better position you'll be in down the road. Because as someone else who's on LinkedIn every day, that your network just grows exponentially. The more people you have in your network, the better of an aggregator the tool is able to be, and in recommending people that you should connect with next.
Sure.
And so there's it just spider webs out from where you started to where you end up. And so, and I tell them all the time, it's like, hey man, like when I was in college, I had my experience at Chick-fil-A, my experience at Hibbett Sports, like at Journeys. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, you didn't work for IBM when you were in college. I think people I think professionals understand that. Like, they students feel almost embarrassed because they feel as though they don't have any kind of credible information to share. But it's like, guys, you guys are involved in these national honor societies.
Yeah.
There's stuff you can put on there. And just the fact that you're working, period, shows the industry that this person they're engaged, and they're diverse, and they have all their things together. So I'm glad you're in agreement with me, Greg, because I get headaches sometimes when I'll ask a group of students, raise their hand if anybody has a LinkedIn, and it's like, 2 amongst 20. It's gotten better every time I've gone back, which has been great. But yeah, I'm glad we're in agreement there, because that's something that's a pain point for me.
Yeah. So, there's obviously all of these connections that could be made digitally. Geez. And I also see, a lot of great stuff going on elsewhere on social media, right? When you look at, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, all of the different experiences that are being shared there by people, whether they're learning how to fly, whether they're flying, whether they're supporting aircraft. There's a lot of cool stuff out there, and I think that really helps in reaching all these people outside of the industry. But you've mentioned it a couple times now about what you're doing at Auburn for I guess it's the Business Aviation Day. Can you maybe provide a little bit more detail on when that is, where it is, and what the goal of it is?
Absolutely. So Auburn is we are hosting our 3rd annual Business Aviation Day conference, and what that is it is a 2.5 day event where we try to. It's really the epitome of what I've been saying throughout this entire recording is we are able to get industry professionals in front of the students. Just a bit of education on Auburn's aviation program. I graduated in 2015 in a class of about 20 students. I think there were maybe 120 students in the entire program. The program now has over 600 students.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this has grown like crazy in a very, very short period of time. Along with that are more students that have interest in business aviation. I was kind of an outlier in my class. Most of my folks decided to go to the airlines, whether pilot or from operations. I was always business aviation centric, and I preach the gospel of BizAv every time I go back and speak to students. And I learned more and more that there are students out there that want to get into business aviation. They just don't know how, and they don't know what is out there. And so Auburn, so this is our 3rd year of having this event at Auburn, and what it is, it's an opportunity for the students to connect with industry professionals, and we have been very, very fortunate to have such an outpouring of participation from the industry. This year in particular, I think most of the OEMs are involved in some capacity. Whether it's having personnel that's on board or contributing an aircraft to, we're going to have a static display on the last day of the event. But from the OEMs to the local corporate flight departments, both from the state of Alabama and Georgia. I'm working on getting some groups in Florida involved right now. And everything from pilots to aircraft sales professionals to dispatchers. We are just covering the entire gamut, and from every real facet of the industry, to create these touch points, as I said earlier, so that the students can have these unique conversations with people that have really cool jobs. So hopefully it plants that seed that, wow, maybe one day I do want to go work for Garmin. His job sounds really cool. Installing or helping to design avionics or selling avionics to end users. But just creating moments, that help these students gain more knowledge on the industry as a whole. So we have various different networking receptions that are scheduled for the week. We have various different roundtable discussions with different groups that are going to be involved. So women in corporate aviation are going to be involved, and we're going to have we have a nice roundtable to speak about exactly what's going on from their perspective, and kind of just really kind of as the industry as a whole. We have various different groups that are involved that are. So we have different luncheons, and there's opportunities for participants to speak to the students directly. So to have class speaking presentations, And at the end of the event, we're also going to be having a kind of like a miniature career fair, so that
Cool.
for the groups that want to present their company, they're able to
Right.
have to share explicitly to the students, like, hey, we're hiring in X, Y, and Z capacities, so that they can learn more about the company in a more traditional sense.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that we're going to have a static display as well. And I mean, we've got quite a few aircraft that are on board, and I mean, it's everything from high performance pistons to turboprops to we have a group that, fingers crossed, is going to be bringing their global in. I mean, so
Okay.
I mean,
Sweet.
we're going to have some pretty heavy
I
metal.
I think when you like, if you're a student and a global pulls up, I think it may change your perspective on like, and really like say, whoa, this is, because not every day that as a student you'd get to step on and check out a global or a large business jet, right? And so
100%.
I think that can really change somebody's trajectory and say, okay, one, this is a badass aircraft, right? And two, like, tell me more about what this plane does. Like, who's flying on it? What is it used for? What's everything that surrounds this aircraft, right? And from there, the opportunities really expand, and you could really open somebody's eyes on what's going on in this segment of the industry.
And that's exactly it. We work in an industry that has these beautiful, complex machines that are centered around, but there's a very small population of people in the world that have ever actually touched a business jet.
Right.
At that age, just as you said, being able to see this behemoth of an aircraft, and then just the mind just starts spinning from that point. It's like, man, like, could I one day fly this plane? Could I one day, be in control of saying where this plane goes? It's just a launching pad for so many conversations. And so I think having those planes present is really what solidifies the event, and showing, all right, this is all cool in paper, and, this is a job that you can have. But when you get that job, you get to control that.
Right.
What you're doing, gets, is necessary for getting that aircraft into the sky, or making sure that plane has the proper connectivity to serve its mission. But what you're doing on the ground is so that plane can have a successful mission. And so that it really bridges the gap and really kind of makes it more tangible, and for the students to be able to see, like, oh crap, like, I could somehow be involved in supporting that plane. That's awesome. And so, because once again, I didn't have these ideas until I was in Wichita, and I'm walking through the manufacturing plant, and just seeing, like, wow, like, this is cool, just to be around all these planes, to somehow have some kind of involvement in whether it's their sale or operation, but to know that I somehow was involved in the future of that aircraft. It gets you really excited, especially if you love planes. And everybody in business aviation, you ask them why they're here, is because we love aviation. If you go into other industries, that's not quite the case.
Sure.
It was close to the house. My father worked here, or it's not because they're passionate about the industry, but everybody in business aviation loves aviation. And so I would hate to see us lose talent to other industries because of our lack of attention, or our lack of being proactive.
Right.
And so that's a part of why I'm so passionate about what it is that I'm doing, because I love this industry, and I want to help contribute towards its longevity. And we're only going to get there by injecting this youthful, exuberant talent that's going to help shape and mold the future. So
for sure,
that's
well, I know. I know you're really excited about it. I love it. I love what you're doing in regards to everything, the mentorship, this aviation day, all the connections that you're making and trying to make, and what you're looking to do in the future with your new foundation. So, for listeners out there, if anybody wants to talk to you about any of those great things, or if they need some international trip support, where can they find you?
Absolutely. So I have a complete open door policy on LinkedIn. I respond to every single message I receive. That is the easiest way to get in contact with me. My email is Jordan Scales, my first name last name at JETEX JETEX.com. Should you need to contact me in a professional manner, that's how you can reach me. But I'm likely most accessible via my LinkedIn platform.
Cool.
And so I'm all about collaborating with anybody. I think that there are tremendous synergies in the most unfound places. And anything that is going to push this agenda towards bringing more youthful thoughts and ideas into the industry, I am 100% for. Really anything that deals with innovation in the industry, I'm a co-signer for it. So
cool.
I hope that this recording was kind of a call to action to some folks out there to want to get more involved in some capacity, or at least partner up with a movement that's already in progress. Because I think if you aren't, then it's kind of a detriment to the industry as a whole. So it's always best to be on the winning side of things. So
for sure.
So
well, cool,
yeah.
Jordan. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. It's been great connecting with you, great talking with you here, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, of course.